Hello, everyone. How are you? I hope you're having a great week. I hope that you've had a blessed week from last week and that everything is going well for you. Yeah. So today I am talking about hearing the audible voice of God. And yeah, I know that sounds crazy. So Job 37, 2 through 7 says, "Hear attentively the thunder of his voice and the rumbling that comes from his mouth. He sends it forth under the whole heaven, his lightning to the ends of the earth. After it, a voice roars. He thunders he thunders with his majestic voice, and he does not restrain them when his voice is heard. God thunders marvelously with his voice. He does great things which we cannot comprehend. For he says to the snow, fall on the earth, likewise to the gentle rain, and the heavy rain of his strength." Hi,
Who are you talking to?
I'm making a video to put on YouTube. Who are you talking to?
Hi.
It's
Right
about
now, this is my mom.
Testimonies of
This is my
Jesus.
mom. You shouldn't go to school because you could probably die from the masks. So I say don't go to school, just go to homeschool. Well, stay home and do homeschool.
Are you enjoying homeschool?
Yes.
Yeah.
Although it might be tougher, but it's safe.
What's tougher about it?
That you're not used to it.
That you're not used to it? What about when you get used to it? What'll be tougher?
You just kissed me on the lips.
Well, you were trying to kiss me. Okay, don't make out with my cheek. If you would like to come and tell them a testimony, you can. No? Okay, I love you. All right. So, verse 7. He seals the hand of every man, that all men may know his work. Okay? So, this one's a little bit tricky because I don't want to give information from anybody else's stories that if they want to share those, I feel like that should be their choice. So I have other children besides that one, and I found myself needing to go through the courts and get set custody situation. Before that, we had just shared together. We didn't really argue. We got along. Anyways, there was an incident, and I just felt it would be better to have something in place. So I filled out all of this paperwork to try and get custody arranged, and a lot of other stuff with everything else that was with that. But that's not my part of the story to tell. Anyway, so I filled out these papers, and shortly after I had filed a case with the court, how do I say this? I guess the best way to say it is just that I didn't feel that it would be safe to wait. There was a restraining order I had filed in it as well, but for children's in my state, when you have a restraining order for a child, they're not permanent. You can get them permanent, but it takes like a lot more work, and I didn't have any of the evidence back yet from, anyways, that's a whole other thing. Anyway, so I decided that it would be best if we left for a little while, until I could figure out like the whole safety situation and having those restraining orders be more permanent, or anyway. So we leave for about 6 months, and I don't know if I was really ready to deal with it yet. The 6 months were really difficult, but they led me to God, which is a testimony I would love to share, but I can't for other reasons. Anyways, so we're gone for about 6 months, and I find Jesus while we're gone. And then one day, out of the blue, I'm praying, I'm reading my Bible, everything is starting to look up. And all of a sudden, I'm just like, oh, I should go back and deal with this issue. And at the time, I didn't even have the money to come back to deal with the issue. So I prayed about it, and I'm like, okay, God, if I am supposed to go back, you will tell me, you will let me know that that is what we are supposed to do. And if not, then we will just stay here and continue on like as originally planned. So a couple days later, my dad came to me and was like, hey, you probably are going to want to get back soon and deal with these issues. And I'm not going to tell you where we were or where we had to come back to. Just, it was quite a ways. There's like a 1,300-mile difference. So it's quite a jaunt. It's not like, oh, drive over for the day and drive back. So I'm like, and I'm thinking about this. And I decided I would go to a different church than I had usually gone to. Never been to that church. Don't know why I wanted to go there. Well, I do now. Anyway, at the time I didn't know. So I go in and we worship, and it's great. And the pastor starts talking, and he starts talking about how the Lord will put you where he wants you, and he will guide you, and he will not let you go. He will do what's best for you. And so I just kind of knew. I was just like, oh, okay, it's time to go back. And so then I'm like, okay, God, well, you're wanting me to drive 1,300 miles with my children to go deal with this issue, and I don't even have a house to go back to. I don't have any money to drive back to the place. I don't have jack squat, really. So if this is what you want me to do, you're going to have to supply the need. So within a couple of days, I had gotten a deposit, but it wasn't quite enough for what I felt like we would need like the bare minimum of what we would need to come back and drive the 1,300 miles and, cover a hotel, cover food, cover gas, all of that. And then my dad came to me and he's like, I feel like I'm supposed to give you this money, even though I know that you will leave, like you will go back. But I feel like that's what I'm supposed to do. So I'm just going to follow the Lord and do what I'm told. And I did. I used the money. I came back. So I got back the day before New Year's. And obviously there was like a ton of people here, not here, the place that we came back to, that we had not seen and that we missed and we loved. And so the day before New Year's, we get back and we're like, oh my gosh, guess what? We're here. Let's see you and be excited. And, I was still really nervous about the safety situations that we had left for. So we visited for a little while and then I checked into a domestic violence shelter. For anybody that doesn't know, they're gated communities for anybody who's been through like a domestic violence situation, any sort of just any scary situation where you need protection and somebody to kind of watch your back. And so we checked into there and it was, so the next day was New Year's Day and we just kind of rested because we had been gone for so long and things had been so crazy while we were gone. So during that 6 months, we were just kind of out in the middle of nowhere, not the middle of nowhere, many different places. And I didn't have babysitters. I didn't have anything before I had run into my dad, which is kind of another story I'll have to share on a different Tuesday. Anyways, so I hadn't even had a break from my kids, nor did I want one. I was terrified that my daughter would get taken from me or my son would get taken from me as leverage to get my daughter. And so we check into this shelter just because I'm scared. I don't know what to do. I don't want to deal with the problem. And so we didn't have anywhere to go either. So we check in, and on New Year's Day, we just kind of rested. We stayed there. We ate. We took long hot showers. We, all that. And then the next day, I got a notification so in the court system, if you don't know where someone is, you have to do anything legal with them. You have to give what is it called? Public service, I think is what it's called. Basically, you have to put notification that there is a legal proceeding against the person, in a public place, in the last known public place that the person was. So, newspapers. I have not heard of anyone using social media, but I'm sure that it could be, and I'm sure just because I haven't heard of it doesn't mean it hasn't happened. So anyways, I get this public notification that there is legal proceedings, and if I would not have come back to deal with it, then my child would have been put into the custody of not the person that hurt her, but the person who was in contact with the person that hurt her. They were living in the same house. And so clearly that would have been a terrible situation. You know, like, hello, that's why we left. Just a second. And so I get this notification. When you have that, you have to answer like within so many days. For this particular one, I think I had like 21 days to answer. And then if you don't respond to it, then they file what's called a default judgment and they get whatever they asked for. So I go in and I'm like frantic and I hurry and I prepare all of these papers and I'm like, this can't happen because all of these reasons and everything. And I rush to the courthouse to file my answer because I'm like, no way is that happening. She's going to stay with me. Like, my kids are going to be safe. That's not ever going to happen. So, I go to the courthouse and the clerk had previously done all of my paperwork that I had filed before I left, before we took off. So I go in there and I bring this answer and she's like, well, wait a minute, you already have an open case. So what you need to do is file to have the case that this other person opened moved into your case, because you can't have two open cases about the same issue. It has to be put into one. And since I had filed first, then my case took precedence. And so I, for a minute, got confused because the clerk was like, well, I guess you could put it into, just move everything into his case. And, but then you would have to travel to where that person is. And I was like, well, I don't know if I should do that. Maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't. And I just stood there for a second and I started to tell her, yes, let's put this into this other person's case and just move it all there. And I still think she thinks that I completely lost my mind. I'm standing there and out of nowhere, this roaring, it sounded like thunder, but it was like thunder made of a million waterfalls all at once. And it just said, no! Like, and it was the loudest thing I have ever heard. It shook me to my core. There was a huge painting, a ginormous painting, like, I mean, probably 80 inches on the wall. And I remember hearing that painting like push back onto the wall and hit the wall after this booming, just no. And I stood there and I looked around. I'm like looking for who just yelled no. Like, what's going on? What is happening? The bailiff had not heard anything. He's just chilling in his chair, hanging out like he was. The clerk is staring at me while I'm like looking around for this person who I thought had said this. She's like, are you okay? What's wrong? You know? And I am like do you not hear that? Do you not hear the... She did not hear the painting hit the wall. She did not feel the room shake. She did not hear the thundering voice. No one heard anything but me. And so because of that, I was like, oh, this must be the voice of God. And Job being one of my favorite books, you know, God thunders marvelously with his voice. He thunders with his majestic voice. And so because of that, I did not move the case up there. And Romans 8:28 says, we know that all things work together for the good of those who love God and those who are called according to his purpose. And John 10:25 through 27. Well, we'll just do, Jesus says, I think it's 26, sorry. But Jesus says, the works that I do in my Father's name, they bear witness of me, but you do not believe because you are not of my sheep. And I said to you, my sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. So I decided, hey, I better listen. If you're going to shake the painting on the wall and you're going to audibly yell at me to not move this case, I had better listen. So I just merged the cases into the case that I already had where we were. And it took another 3 or 4 months, and it took a lot of prayer, and it took a lot of, just a lot, mostly prayer. And originally, I was granted a default against this person. And I considered that enough of a victory. And enough proof of God saying, hey, no, you need to do this, and him following through with that, and him doing what was best for us. I considered that enough of a victory. But then my child, we started praying for those other relationships in her life. And God took us back through that court system. I was again protected because I had the advantage of having the case with me where I was, and having that default. And it actually put me in a position to go to not only this person, but the person's attorney and the judge, and in front of them say, hey, God forgives. He is loving and he is righteous and he loves justice, but he also loves mercy. And so now that the safety issue is taken care of, we're not going to punish the rest of these people. We're going to forgive, we're going to let it go, and we're going to mend these relationships. Now, obviously, I had to be very careful in how those relationships were brought back together. So there was a lot of that in there. But it was amazing to me how that one thing could have changed the outcome. And I'm telling you, there is nothing like hearing the audible voice of God. I have never been so immediately humbled and loved and terrified and comforted all in the same moment ever in my entire life. It's just a feeling that I could not ever describe. And yeah, so now my children enjoy wonderful relationships with a lot of people. There have been little disagreements, but they're safe and get to continue their relationships, and everybody else is safe. And it's just amazing to me how God can restore. So I guess there's a few testimonies in that. The restoration of the relationships is just incredible to me. Hearing his voice, like, wow, what a huge privilege it is that I got to experience that. And just of redemption, like, it's amazing. So, anyways, that is the testimony that I'm sharing this Tuesday. And I didn't get a whole lot of cooking done, but that's okay. I hope you guys have a wonderful week. I hope that you are blessed and that you stay safe in all of the craziness going on in the world. I won't go into politics. I will say Jesus is coming back. He is the way, the truth, the life. He is the only salvation. Do not believe all of these people that are telling you, hey, we all believe the same God and we're all going to end up the same place. That is a lie from the pit of hell. Jesus is the only Son of God. He was crucified on a cross to forgive us of our sins, and he was resurrected 3 days later to bring us new life and abundant life. And I am living proof of the glorious life that he wants to give. So just know that I love you all. I pray for everyone every single day in the time that we're in, and that we will hear Jesus, that we will hear his voice. We will know it's him calling us. And I will see you all in the air.